Hello nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel where once again we have a new video for you guys. Today's video is actually a recommendation from one of the viewers, and that is my top 5 favorite Star Wars omnibuses. This is an exciting video for me to make because despite me being a huge Star Wars fan, I have not made that many Star Wars focused videos on the channel, so I am pumped to get into this list. But before we jump into that, a quick reminder, like always, that if you're interested in any of the books that I'm about to talk about, or that I've featured on my channel, to use the channel sponsor organicpricebooks.com. You can use the discount code STAYNERDY for $2 off your order, or you can use the code STAYNERDY, ship it together, to save yourself 5% on that entire order. It's a great way to save yourself some money, but also to help out the channel. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into my Star Wars listing, starting with, of course, number 5. And coming in at number 5 is Star Wars Legends: The Empire Volume 1. This is non-canon material, hence why I said Star Wars Legends. I'm going to make that clear during each entry. So some of the material here I absolutely love. Not all of it, because that's why it's at number 5. But the first half of this omnibus that focuses on Darth Vader can be held up to some of the best Star Wars comics I've ever read. You get to see Darth Vader go on a multitude of adventures, hunting down Jedi. There's even an issue where he is taking on multiple Jedis at once. And you also not only get to see those adventures, but you get to see just how powerful Darth Vader is as a character in general when it comes to lightsaber dueling or just using the Force in general. There's several scenes in here where he doesn't even have a lightsaber in hand, and he is taking on a multitude of enemies and doing a full-scale attack with no lightsaber, which is absolutely awesome, so incredible, so cool to see. Darth Vader is easily in my top 5 favorite Star Wars characters, and definitely my favorite dark side of the Force user, that's for sure. But I also like to kind of look at a lot of that material and a lot of those issues as the material that had to be established and kind of walk the walk before Charles Soule could jump on Darth Vader and run and tell his story, because you're going to notice a lot of familiar notes in those stories when it comes to exploring Darth Vader's psyche and Anakin's relationship with Padme and how it still affects him even as Darth Vader, and even his confliction of being a Sith when he was once a Jedi Knight. So really, really good stuff. Action-packed. The only reason that's at number 5 is because the second half of the omnibus is a little hit or miss, give or take, but there are some strong entries even on that second half. But the first half of this omnibus is amazing, and I highly recommend you at least reading those issues if you don't have the omnibus, because it is some awesome Darth Vader content. At number 4, we do have Star Wars Legends: The New Republic Volume 2. This is non-canon material, so this is all by Dark Horse, very similar to the last entry. So the main reason that this is included on the list is because of the second half of the omnibus, which is going to be the Thrawn trilogy, which everybody loves Thrawn. But the main reason is actually the Dark Empire trilogy. For lack of a better way of describing it, is essentially episodes 7, 8, and 9. So a full continuation of the Skywalker saga before Force Awakens, Rey, Finn, Poe, any of these characters were even a thought in somebody's head. And it is so awesome. You get to see just how powerful the Force is once again, especially the dark side of the Force, with Force transference being a thing. You get to see the re-existence or the topic of clones being brought up once again post the Clone Wars, which is awesome because after the Clone Wars we kind of never saw them again, and it was kind of head-scratching. Well, it fleshes that out a little bit more, which I'd love to see, the lore building that takes place. You also get to see Emperor Palpatine, or Palpatine, Darth Sidious, be more of a pivotal antagonistic role rather than more on the backside like we saw him during episodes 4, 5, and 6, which I absolutely love, that we get to see Darth Sidious actually duel with a lightsaber, actually use his Force abilities to their full force, and it is so awesome. And then on top of that, as if any of that isn't enough and doesn't get you excited enough, we also get to see a new generation of Jedis as Luke Skywalker reestablishes the Jedi Order, and we also get to meet the true MVP, which is Jedi Brand, which you guys can read to kind of find out why he's the real MVP. But absolutely awesome story here. I love a continuation of the Skywalker saga. This is my episodes 7, 8, and 9. This is how I would have preferred it to play out, but it is really interesting when you do read this and you see just how much they pulled from it for the actual episodes 7, 8, and 9. So while you're reading, just keep that in mind. It's really cool to see how they paid homage and kind of used it as source material. But highly recommend at least the second half of this omnibus, or at minimum the Dark Empire trilogy. And coming in at number 3 is Star Wars by Jason Aaron. This is canon material, and this does immediately follow Episode 4, A New Hope, and lead into Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So if you want to know kind of what's happening with Luke, Leia, and Han between those two movies, this is going to be what you have to read. But you have some really awesome scenes here, including some kick-ass scenes with Chewbacca. But you get to see Luke and Darth Vader come face-to-face for the first time. You get an awesome crossover event called Vader Down, which took place between the Kieran Gillen Darth Vader run and this Star Wars run, where you get to quite literally see Vader do even more badassery, which we already know how I feel about Vader doing anything cool, especially him being one of my favorite characters. You get to see Black Krrsantan, I always struggle to say that, introduced for the first time in comics, and he is an awesome character. You get to see Dr. Aphra introduced in comics, and she's an awesome character. And then you also get to see a little storyline that follows Sergeant Creel, who's a stormtrooper that wields a lightsaber. How much cooler can we get than that? But really, really good stuff. I love what this contributes to the movies and the story and the lore between episodes 4 and 5. I'm absolutely here for it. And a little nugget of detail that I just happen to enjoy that much more is also we get to see Luke wearing the yellow leather jacket that we all know and love, but never saw other than that end scene of A New Hope. And finally, we get to see him using it in action and actually wearing it, and it is so cool. Art is fantastic, and it's Jason Aaron, a comic book legend, writing an incredible universe, which is Star Wars. So definitely read this if you want to read canon material, because some of it is essential reading going into Empire Strikes Back. And in the number 2 spot is Star Wars Legends, The Old Republic, Volume 1. This is not canon material for anybody that cares. So what this does is this establishes the lore before the Skywalker saga, before the Empire was a thing. This is during a time where Jedis were flourishing and playing a major role in the galaxy, and we get introduced to a new main character named Zane Carrick, and he is an awesome character, extremely relatable. But on top of that, we also get to see a borderline perfect first issue, because the last couple pages of the first issue of this series is amazing. It makes you want to dive into the rest of the series and continue reading. It is that good. We also get introduced to another questionable character, which is Lucien Dre, who is a Jedi Master, even though some of his methods are a little bit questionable, which we won't get into, but he is an awesome character too. Talk about somebody that kind of gets the emotions flowing, which we're not going to dive into either, so you don't really know what the character's motivations are, but absolutely awesome. I think this is so thought-provoking and so groundbreaking. It really gets you thinking about the Jedi Order, what the Jedi are, their ways of doing things, and is it right or wrong? And you also have some of the lore of the Mandalorian War being established also. So for those of you that like KOTOR 1 or 2, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, and Darth Revan, some of his lore and the era where he was existing as a Jedi is established and built up as well. So really, really cool stuff to see the Jedi flourishing and playing such a big role in the galaxy and wars and kind of doing what Jedi are meant to do, but then they have a kind of deep-seated and dark-rooted side as well that gets really fleshed out and makes you start questioning things and wondering kind of where you're at as far as your views. But great stuff. Borderline perfect first issue, new characters that you don't know if they're going to make it or not. Absolutely awesome. Highly recommend it, whether you like canon material or not. I think this fleshes out the early days of the Jedi just beautifully, and it has characters that just build up even more of the lore and amazing roster that the Star Wars universe already has. Coming in at number 1, which I think some of you probably saw coming, is Darth Vader by Charles Soule, the Omnibus. This is canon material, and this immediately picks up after episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So you get to see all of the early missions and early days of Darth Vader. You really get to see the confliction of the character once being a Jedi and now being the apprentice of the Sith Darth Sidious. You get to see Anakin kind of die off, at least the portrayal of Anakin die off, and Darth Vader get born. You get to see him try and get used to his new mechanical body that he's not used to. You get to also see the character find his Sith lightsaber. This is the run that also, for the first time ever in comic books, movies, shows, or anything, we saw the bleeding of a kyber crystal, which is now a very popular aspect of the lore that a lot of people really enjoy. But you get to see him on his earlier missions and him take on a handful of Jedis and the confliction that kind of follows those acts and those events and missions. You also get to see him establish his castle on Mustafar, and then you even get a little bit of Sith lore delved upon as well, which I think is a nice touch. And once again, another series that just shows you just how powerful Darth Vader is when he is lifting oceans with the Force, crushing vehicles with the Force, and taking on a multitude of Jedis in hand-to-hand combat, dueling with a lightsaber, dueling without his lightsaber, whatever it may be, he is doing it, and it is so freaking awesome. I absolutely love it. There is easily probably 2 storylines in here that I consider perfect, and there's probably maybe 3 issues in here that I consider perfect, and there's another aspect of it that kind of makes you start thinking about the character of Darth Vader and his struggles and trials and tribulations of being a now Sith post the Jedi Purge. And it is so incredible. Charles Soule knocked it out of the park with this, and this is my favorite Star Wars run, Star Wars title that I've ever read in comic books, period. And that does wrap up today's video covering my top 5 favorite Star Wars omnibuses. I hope this helps out a lot for anybody that wants to get into the Star Wars comic book game or just the Star Wars omnibus world in general. These 5 I highly recommend, and if you don't want to collect the omnis, at least read the stories that are collected in them, because they are really good comic books, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. It adds a lot to the lore and world that we all know and love at the end of the day. But enough out of me. For you guys, comment down below. Let me know what your favorite Star Wars omnibuses are, or your favorite Star Wars comics, or even Star Wars storylines, because I would love to hear from you guys, because we are a community at the end of the day. And if you'd like to join that community, you can hit that subscribe button and become a member. Also, if you want to hit that thumbs up icon, that would be much appreciated, but only hit it if you enjoyed today's video. And if you did enjoy today's video, you can also ring the bell. That way you get notified anytime I put out content. But thank you again. I truly appreciate each and every one of you guys. And once again, of course, stay nerdy.